we'll go ahead and get started with the second part of this evening's activities. And first of all, I want to give you a little bit of an apology. I think there was a mix-up in communication. Our media release that went out does say 5:30 to 6:15. There's an open house. 6:30 there'll be a presentation. I think it showed up in the paper as just the meeting starts at 5:30. So hopefully you all had time to look around at some of the displays that we've had outside, visit with some of our staff. But we are here tonight to learn about and discuss issue 1, which will be on the ballot in November. My name is Scott Bennett. I'm the director of the Arkansas Department of Transportation. I'll be leading the presentation tonight and handling the question and answer and comment period at the end. This is our 5th town hall meeting. We had 12 of them scheduled. We've had a pretty good crowd so far. It's good to see so many people out tonight here. So we hope again that you've had a chance to look at a lot of the displays and talk to a lot of our folks about issue 1. And besides me, we do have several staff members that hopefully you have met. And we also have 3 of our highway commissioners that are here this evening. And I'll let them introduce themselves. Al.
Good evening. My name's Alan Farmer. I just drove in today from Jonesboro and been driving around the area and enjoying myself. Been at the top of the mountain and back. So really enjoyed the area. Glad that everybody's come out and really look forward to hearing your comments.
I'm Philip Caldo from Springdale, and I'm real close to your area, as is my cohort right here, but we're interested in keeping things moving forward, keeping the roads up in good shape, and we hope that y'all really consider the initiative that's coming up in November. It's going to help you, your cities, your counties, and it's going to help us keep up with maintenance that's so needed here in the area. Thank y'all.
And I'm Keith Gibson from Fort Smith. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. I think we'll really get some good information that you'll be able to take back and make some good informed decisions. So look forward to all your comments. Thank you for being here.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there are already some people in the audience that know you're going to vote for issue 1, and there's some that know you're going to vote against issue 1. So we understand how that works, but we want to make sure that whatever decision you make it on fact. So we're going to try to present those things tonight. How we got to this point, what will happen if issue 1 passes, and what will happen if issue 1 doesn't pass. So for the very beginning, in a nutshell, issue 1 on the ballot, November the 3rd of this year. It is the continuation of the current half-cent sales tax for highways. So the simple answer is, you vote yes, funding will continue from that source after June of 2023 when the current half-cent sales tax is scheduled to expire. A vote no means funding from that current sales tax will end after June of 2023. So to give you a little bit of perspective of what the half-cent sales tax means for highway, road, and street improvements, it generates about $205 million a year for highway improvements around the state. It also generates $44 million a year for turn back to counties for county road and bridge improvements, and another $44 million a year for turn back to cities for city street improvements. So that's what issue 1 is, and the current half-cent sales tax is. So how did we really get to this point? To give you a little bit of history, we have the 12th largest highway system in the country. So we have more miles than California, New York, and Florida. So we've got a lot to take care of. But we're a relatively small state. We have a relatively small tax base, that we're 41st in the revenue per mile that we have to take care of those highways. So there's a pretty big disconnect. The top line on this chart shows state general revenue over time, going back to 1980. And it's had a fairly healthy growth since that time period. The chart, the line on the bottom, is highway revenue over that same time period. Now, highway revenue historically has been largely based on a cent per gallon fuel tax. So we have had 3 fuel tax increases in this time, one in 1985, one in 1991, and one in 1999. So what happens is you have more vehicles traveling and you're driving more miles, but you're getting a lot better fuel efficiency. So when it's a cent per gallon tax, it's based on how many gallons you buy. It's not on the pump price. So even though the pump price has gone up, our tax revenue has stayed relatively constant because people are getting a lot better fuel efficiency. If our revenue had kept pace with state general revenue over that time period, we wouldn't be in that situation. So not only do we have a fairly flat revenue stream, we've got a lot of inflation that we've dealt with over time. This table goes back to 1993. It's a chart that was put together nationwide. And it goes back to 1993 because that's the last time the federal fuel tax was raised. So since 1993, the price of college tuition has gone up almost 400%. Our household income has gone up 80%. The price of gas has gone up 140%, even though the taxes on that gas and the revenue we have to take care of the roads still haven't gone up that much. Price of a new car has gone up 50%, but in that same time period, you haven't had a lot of increases in revenue to be able to keep up with inflation. Kind of bring things here closer to home, we look back several years ago to 1995. And in 1995, if we had $10 million that we would use just to overlay a 2-lane highway, so let's just put a nice, smooth surface on a 2-lane highway, we could have overlaid 200 miles of highway with $10 million. Today, we can only overlay 54 miles of highway with that same $10 million. So it's about a fourth of what we were able to do years ago with the same revenue. So when your revenue stays flat, you have more vehicles traveling, they're causing more damage, it costs a lot more to be able to take care of that, but we're not generating as much revenue. And to kind of put a bigger picture in perspective, a lot of times people don't realize how much it costs to do what we do. So the cost of building a new 4-lane interstate, just on average, is over $10 million a mile. Build a new 5-lane highway, it's almost $7 million a mile. Build a new 2-lane highway, it's about $3.5 million a mile. Or to widen a highway from 2 lanes to 5 lanes, it's about $5 million a mile. And that's just the cost of construction. That's not the cost of buying the right-of-way, or the utilities, and all those things that have to go into it too. So the cost of what we do has really been high. And it's gone up a lot over the last several years, and revenue hasn't really kept pace with inflation. So what does that mean? Over the next 10 years, we've identified a little over $9 billion in improvements that are needed on the highway system. Now, I think it's important to know what's in that $9 billion. That $9 billion is really to keep our highway system in a state of good repair. So it doesn't mean we're going to have every mile of our 16,400 mile system in good condition. It doesn't mean that we're going to build all of I-49 in that $9 billion or all of I-69. What it means is we're going to widen highways that are congested, and we'll have a good part of our highway system in a state of good repair. So it's a reasonable target of needs. But over the same 10-year time period, we only have about $4.5 billion in revenue to meet those needs. So we're able to meet about half of our true needs around the state, not even counting some of the bigger projects like Interstate 49. So then where do you go? How much revenue do you generate to be able to have a good highway system? Governor Hutchinson a few years ago put together a highway funding working group. That highway funding working group set a target of an additional $400 million a year for highway improvements. Well, that's a really big number. And it was a hard number for a lot of people to really wrap their minds around. So there were some of the General Assembly that asked legislative audit to come in and take a look at what we do, our revenue, our expenses, the way we develop, the needs that we said we had. And they said, well, lo and behold, based on your revenue, based on your expenses, based on your needs, your shortfall is $478 million a year. Times 10, that's the $4.8 billion shortfall that we said. Well, Governor Hutchinson, in last year's legislative session, working with members from the House and the Senate, working with some stakeholders, put together a highway funding plan that would generate $300 million a year in additional revenue for highways. It's not 400, it's not 478, but it is not insignificant in what we would be able to accomplish with another $300 million a year. So that's really what we're able what we're here to talk about. That $300 million a year is actually coming in two different parts. Number one, there was an act that was passed last year, and revenue in the amount of about $95 million a year started flowing last October. Now, Act 416 is made up of three parts. The first part is an additional sales tax on the wholesale price of fuel. It's the equivalent of 3 cents a gallon in gasoline and 6 cents a gallon in diesel. And even with that tax increase, we continue to have some of the lowest prices per gallon of fuel anywhere in the country. The second part of Act 416 is an additional registration fee on hybrid and electric vehicles. Another $100 a year on hybrid vehicles and $200 a year on electric vehicles. And the purpose of that part of it was really a fairness issue, because they're not paying as much to be able to maintain the roads that they're using every day. So it was set so they would pay really the equivalent of what that average user of a gas-powered vehicle would be paid. That generates about $2 million a year. The fuel tax generates about $58 million a year for us, another $13 million a year for cities, and $13 million for counties. The registration fee on hybrid electric vehicles is about $2 million a year, so it's not a lot of revenue, but it becomes really a fairness issue. The third part of Act 416 was additional revenue that would be generated from the people approving casino gambling or more gaming in the state. It would be a minimum of $35 million a year coming to the department for additional improvements. So that makes up that $95 million that started flowing at the latter part of last year. But the biggest part of it is issue one. And issue one is the continuation of the current half-cent general sales tax for a major highway program. The one that would generate $205 million for the department, $44 million for cities, and $400 million for counties, which makes up that total $300 million. So what are the benefits, really, from another $300 million a year in highway revenue? Well, number one, it would provide over $8 billion in economic activity for Arkansas over a 10-year period. So that's a significant amount of economic development. Usually when you spend highway revenue, that turns over several times into the economy through the work that's done in the private sector, bringing in additional businesses and things of that nature. And even from a standpoint of less wear and tear on your vehicles, lower insurance rates and things like that. So over $8 billion in economic activity from a $300 million a year investment in a highway program. The other thing that is really big is it supports about 3,600 jobs per year through that highway investment. Now, when you take that $300 million and add it to the revenue that we have, what it really means is we're going to be able to take care of our interstates. They're going to stay in a state of good repair. We're going to be able to make several safety improvements around the state. We'll be able to provide improvements to about 7,000 miles of our highway system as far as the pavement goes. We'll be able to improve about 1,100 bridges in the state over a 10-year period, so we're not going to have any more weight-restricted or poor-condition bridges. We'll be able to have another major highway construction program, so there's a lot of work that will be able to be accomplished with another $300 million a year. So you take that 300, the 95 that started flowing in October, the 205 that is the possibility to start flowing again in July of 2023, add it to our current construction program, it's about $440 million a year. That's $740 million a year worth of construction that we would be able to do around the state. So with that in mind, the commission developed a possible program for that $740 million a year, over 10 years, $7.4 billion. And we're calling it the Renew Arkansas Highways Program. And the reason for that is the vast majority of this investment would be spent on taking care of what we have. About $3 billion just on taking care of our pavements, over $1 billion on taking care of our bridges, another $1 billion on taking care of our interstates and making sure the ride qualities are good, another $500 million on specific safety improvements. That makes up about 76% of this total program. The rest of the program, $1.8 billion over 10 years, matches what we've been doing with the current asset sales tax program. And we're calling that the Connecting Arkansas program because we're providing major improvements, wider roads, new roads to connect different parts of the state. So that's a total of $7.4 billion over a 10-year period. So when you start to really look at what you can do with that type of revenue in the future, you have to look at, okay, what have we done? Well, the lines in red on the map are the jobs that have been let to contract over the last 10 years. The ones in green are the ones that are scheduled. We have funding committed to improvements in those areas through 2023. So in that time period, we had 9,000 miles of improvement on our 16,000 mile system, a total of almost $10 billion in work that we have either already accomplished or we already have committed over the next few years. Then when you start to look at, okay, specifically in this part of the state, and we were looking kind of at a 50-mile radius from these town hall meetings and covering the counties that would be included in that 50-mile radius. The same thing, the red are projects that have been let to contract in the past 10 years, green are projects that are coming up in the next few years. In total, what we've accomplished in this area, almost 660 miles of improvements for a little over $700 million. Committed over the next few years, another 760 miles and about $500 million. So that's a total investment in this part of the state of a little over $1.2 billion that we've either accomplished or we have committed to do in the next few years. Well, then looking at what needs are remaining as far as making sure our pavements are smooth and our bridges are in good condition. That's where we started looking at what needs to be done over the next 10 years. 1,100 bridges across the state, about 7,000 miles of highway improvements across the state. In this region specifically, what that means is almost 1,200 miles of highway would be improved at a cost of almost $700 million. 214 bridges would be improved in this part of the state for almost $180 million. So it's another investment just in taking care of what we have of almost $900 million. Then when you look at that major work, the widening, the new location projects, we have identified not just $1.8 billion over 10 years, but we looked out 20 years into the future for some of these major projects. So $3.6 billion total to be able to do major improvements around the state. In this region of note is I-49. Now the plan we've laid out has about $540 million in it for Interstate 49 from Interstate 40 down to Y City. Now part of it, the part that's not been built so far from Interstate 40 down to Highway 22 up on the northern end, we would buy the right of way for 4 lanes but build 2 lanes right now. The same thing from south of Greenwood down to Y City. We buy right of way for 4 lanes and be able to build 2 lanes of that and be able to add the other 2 lanes in the future. The other part on Highway 270 from Y City over in the Hot Springs, about $55 million to make improvements on selected sections. Now, we would look at the specific needs. Some of it would be passing lanes, some of it might be widening to 4 lanes, but that would provide another connection from this part of the state over into central Arkansas. So that's a lot of the major work that would be accomplished. So in addition to what's shown on the map, because those are just construction costs, we've set aside another $500 million for specific economic development projects that would come about, for partnering projects that would come about with locals, and for local congestion relief. We We've also set aside another $100 million that would be necessary for buying right-of-way, moving utilities, and things of that nature. So that makes up the $3.6 billion over a 10-year period. So all told, you put it all together, and we improved almost 9,000 miles over the last 10 years. Another 7,000 miles off the interstate coming in the next several years. Improvements to the interstate system and improvements, major improvements around the state altogether. Almost $10 billion has been underway or committed. Then you look at the work that's possible coming up in the future. Total investment possible in this part of the state is over $2.5 billion. Considering what we've done the last 10 years and what's going to be possible over the next 10 years if issue 1 passes. But on the other side of it, if issue 1 is not successful this November, that means that we will not be able to have a $740 million a year construction program. That $205 million a year that has been flowing for the last several years is not going to be there. That means our construction program is going to be $535 million a year. That's a 30% reduction in what's going to be possible over the next 10 years. So when you look at a $7.4 billion plan over 10 years, no longer is it going to be $7.4 billion over 10 years. It's going to be $5.35 billion over 10 years, and we'll have to go back to the drawing board to figure out how that revenue would be spent, what types of improvements and where those improvements would be made. Even beyond the highway improvements that would be possible if this issue doesn't pass, there's going to be a big impact at the local level. Right now, turn back to cities and turn back to counties for road and street improvements is $150 million a year for cities and $150 million a year for counties. Part of that is from the current half-cent sales tax. So if issue 1 doesn't pass, then starting in July of 2023, cities and counties are going to have a 30% reduction in their road and street budgets. It's going to drop to $106 million for cities and $106 million for counties. At this local level, what that means in this region, we're generating almost $48 million a year for local road and street improvements. That's going to drop to a little over $35 million a year. That's about $14 million a year in this region that's not going to be available for road and street improvements. $14 million a year that's not going to turn back over into the economy. So it's not going to be possible. So that's really the issue if issue 1 fails. Now, looking forward, I don't know how many of you all like Dr. Seuss. I've been a fan of Dr. Seuss for a long time. One of my favorite quotes is from the Lorax. It says, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better." It's not. You all have the choice of what kind of highway system that you want to have, what kind of local road and street system you want to have. It's your transportation system. Our job at the department is to take as good a care of it as possible with the revenue that we have available. If that revenue is not available, what that means is roads are going to get worse. Roads are going to get more congested. There may be roads that we have to consider converting from paved roads to gravel. But in the end, it's your transportation system, and you get to decide in November whether we get to continue that funding level or not. We're almost finished with this presentation. I want to show you just a brief video, and then we'll get to your questions.
Arkansas, where work ethic is passed down through generations and innovation is encouraged young, where companies can start small and become international businesses. Year after year, the state is growing, but its foundation, thousands of highway miles, is crumbling, making roads dangerous and in desperate need of repair. So working across the aisle with leaders across Arkansas, Governor Asa Hutchinson paved the way for a solution.
And yet today, in 2019, we're passing a highway plan of $300 million to the state of Arkansas to support the maintenance and construction of highways and infrastructure. But it also includes a referral to the voters that they can make the decision, and it gives them the final say-so.
Not only will this program create thousands of construction jobs, it's also set to generate billions of dollars in economic activity, helping helping people and products move efficiently and compete in the 21st century economy, all without raising taxes. Together, we can create more jobs, build better roads, and make a safer Arkansas for our growing population. And under this plan, all Arkansans benefit. Renew Arkansas highways.
So I think we all know that transportation is really the backbone of a strong economy. Two of the biggest parts of the economy in Arkansas are agriculture and tourism. Both of those rely on a good transportation system for their efficiency. So we think this is a very important issue, but again, this is something that you're going to be able to decide. That's enough from us at this point. Now it's your turn. We're going to open up the meeting for your comments and questions. We are recording the meeting, so we ask when you come up to make your comments, you come up to the microphone. In the interest of time, we're going to ask you to try to limit your comments to 2 minutes. And we are, and after everybody that has signed up to speak has spoken, if there's anybody else that wants to come up and make a comment or ask a question, we'll invite you to do so. We're first going to call on those who have indicated a desire to speak. I'll try to give you a little bit of warning when you're next, but first on the list we have Greg Ray, the Sevier County Judge, and after Judge Ray, we have Brandon Ellison, the Polk County Judge. Judge Ray.
Thank you, Director Bennett. Thank you, Commissioners, for being here tonight. I saw y'all in Texarkana, and what this means to Sevier County is $404,000 a year in road revenue, and $202,000 for the cities in the county. And I'm sure Judge Ellison's going to get up here and touch on his county, but if you take that away from Sevier County, that's going to be 30% in road revenue that I'm not going to have. And back in 2012, when this was passed, I knew it could sunset in 2023. I got 17 employees that take care of 449 miles of road. If this doesn't sunset, I will hire more employees, but I don't want to do it because if it sunsets in 10 years, I didn't want to have to lay anybody off. Thank you, citizens, for being here tonight, too. Thank y'all very much.
Judge Ellison, after Judge Ellison, we'll have Senator Terry Rice.
Okay, this is a tax renewal. I kind of came here in self-defense because I don't want to pay any more taxes than anyone else here, but we're paying it now. It's a tax renewal, and we've been giving ourselves a tax break on fuel for the last 30 years. I mean, every one of us gets, I would say, 150% better fuel mileage than you did 30 years ago. So 9 years ago when I took office, one of the revenue streams I have to run the road department is fuel turnback, or fuel tax turnback that Director Bennett talked about. I got $980,000 a year 9 years ago. This year, I get $980,000. It's exactly the same. It hasn't grown. And if any of y'all bought a load of gravel, you know it's not what it cost 10 years ago. It's very expensive. It's just very, very expensive to do what we do. I assure you, if the half cent goes away, it'll be gobbled up by some other special interest, I'm quite sure. So, again, it's something that's necessary. It's going to cost our county's budget 30%. By 2024, this half penny that we get a share of is $500,000 or $500,000 for the Polk County Road Department. So, I'm all in. I just think we need to do this, and there's nothing that promotes economic development more than good roads and bridges. And heaven knows we need it in our area. Thank you, Rick.
Senator Rice, and after Senator Rice, we'll have Bruce Culliver from Mena.
Good evening, good to see you, good crowd out. Wasn't planning on speaking, but let me give you a little perspective.
We told you you had to.
Okay. All right. But let me give give you a little perspective from the legislature. I'm state senator, served in the legislature by 11, just finished up the 11th year. And as state rep, for part of my 6-year term, I had a lot of Polk County up to the back of Richmond. Representative Richmond has now worked with a colleague, Representative John Maddox, does a good job. What I want you to know from me, I came to the legislature in 2009 somewhat a skeptic on the highway department. Like a lot of y'all that I see this stuff on Facebook, when there's one working and there's 5 leaving on the shuttle. Let me tell you what, I've learned, and I'm on the vice chair of the legislative council. We have a subcommittee that's highway oversight review, and we've watched the highway. The Arkansas Highway Department, these commissioners, these staff are one of the most efficient in the country if you put them up against anybody. Let me tell you, your money is being spent efficiently. Roads are critical to the economy, to everything that we do. And remember this, if you have a pothole damage, you will spend more than you will on taxes that are in effect now. Again, this is not a new tax, it is an extension of the current tax you're paying. Let me tell you this real quick too, we've been struggling. Every term, I've tried to find every other way in the world to do this. We've worked on this for years, trying to find better ways to do it. This is one of the most efficient ways. If you borrow money with bonds, you're spending interest money and money you got to pay back. Pay as you go is the way to do it. And it will be one of the most efficient things in Arkansas I've done. I'll be around a little bit. If somebody wants to get my ear, I'm here. Thank you.
I want to tag on something he said just quickly, and something that a lot of people don't know. We actually had fewer employees than we had 10, 20, and 30 years ago. And if we're not the only state agency in Arkansas that say that, they can say that we're one of the very few. We've got the 3rd lowest administrative cost per mile in the country. So we've been doing everything that we can to keep staffing levels down, or at least really constant, and spend as much money as possible out on the road. Mr. Gulliver, and after him we'll have Chris Daniel from Mena.
Thank you very much. I have taken a look at what's going on around here, and over the last 10 years, I have noticed an increase of tractor trailers coming through, and those trucks are very hard on the roads. The vibration causes damage, and we, the people, have to abide and live with the damage. And it, as they have said, it costs money to repair. And I, for one, would like to see the roads repaired, and so that we can get on with our economy. And the trucks are increasing. And through Mena, the damage just continues. Take a look at 71 through Mena, and you will see that there's a lot of potholes that need to be taken care of. I appreciate the fact that they have gone through and overlaid on the southern side of Mena, and it looks like they're going to do some more. So, yeah, we do need the extension.
Yes, we have some plans coming up to work on the rest of the section here in town. Mr. Daniel, after Mr. Daniel, we'll have Trevo Wolfenbarger from Mena.
I just have a quick comment / question, and I'm really not trying to trick you into saying something that you can't say, but a lot of us are real concerned that I-49 completion is so far in the distant future that we're not going to see it in our lifetimes. And 71 is such an important highway in this part of the state, and some of us, myself included, travel it quite a bit, and it really needs some serious attention. So if you could in some way comment on what might happen with the passenger issue 1 to 71. I know there's some things in the slides, but not a lot of detail. And I think that would be real interesting. Some of us that are up and down 71 in this county and up north to Fort Smith and south to Texarkana. I'll sit down.
No, yes, sir. That's actually a really good question. So we've been talking about I-49 for years. Congress came out several years ago and made high priority corridors, congressionally designated high priority corridors. John Paul Hammerschmidt was a congressman from this area. He was very influential in Washington. We had Interstate 49, or future Interstate 49, named as one of the congressional high priority corridors. We thought at that time that meant that there's going to be a whole lot of federal money coming to build I-49, which is about we've only got about $3.5 billion left. Well, we did start getting money from Congress for I-49, but it was earmarked for specific locations. Some of it came in and it was for the northern part, from Alma up to the north. Some of it came in for the Bella Vista bypass. Some of it came in later years. It was designated for the part from Texarkana down to the south to connect to I-20 in Louisiana. And then there was this gap in the middle. Well, we actually had a deal that we worked with Fort Chaffee and the redevelopment authority in Fort Chaffee where they donated the property for I-49, but they would only donate it if we were going to build part of it in a certain amount of time. We did have some earmarked money for that too, but it wasn't enough to do everything. We had this conversation a lot. If we're not going to be able to really make a lot of significant progress on I-49, do we need to stop and take a step back and start working on Highway 71? Well, we built some passing lanes. We got a few more passing lanes that are scheduled to help traffic flow more efficiently, and those are already committed in the next few years. I think there's one north of Mena, one south of Mena, that staff will be able to tell you for sure, but for the most part, what you're going to see on Highway 71 is just making sure that the pavement is in good condition. So then we'll have this 2 lanes, but the 2 lanes will be built, not with driveways and everything, so you have a lot of development. It'll still be built like an interstate, so it'll be free flow from Y-City up to the Fort Smith area. So that's where our plans are. $3.5 billion, we could build all of I-49 with the part that we've got set aside for the capital improvements. We couldn't do anything else anywhere in the state. And that's just not a possibility because there is congestion in other parts of the state. There are other corridors that need to be built. So it's like we said, $300 million, it's not $400 million, it's not $478 million, and even at that, it didn't include the cost of construction of a lot of these major corridors. We're still talking to Congress in Washington about investing more federal money, and we're hoping when they see what a lot of states like Arkansas have done, that they'll see they need to invest more money at the federal level in some of these things to continue the progress. So what our plans are now, if this passes, is buying right away for 4 lanes from Y-City all the way to the north, building 2 lanes, and then we'll take care of what we have on Highway 71 as far as the pavements and bridges go. Okay, Treeville Wolfenbarger from Mena. And that is actually the last individual we have signed up to speak, so if anyone else has a comment that they want to make, you can get ready after this.
I love my Arkansas. It's beautiful, and I like my town, hometown, Mena, Arkansas. And I like to see things grow and improvements. And if the highways will, if this will help improve our highways, it'd be a great thing to bring more economic growth here. We need it because our people are leaving. This town needs to grow, and I'd like to see it grow with us, with our highway improvements.
Does anyone else want to to come up and make a comment, ask a question. Hopefully, we've answered a lot of those things tonight already. And again, our job here is to just give you the information to educate you on what issue 1 will do if it passes and what will happen if it doesn't pass, because we do want your voice to be heard. Again, this is your transportation system. You get to decide, whether we're going to fund it at a somewhat adequate level or not. There are a lot of improvements that are going to be possible, and we hope they're going to become a reality sooner rather than later. We appreciate your time here. Hopefully, you have picked up one of the brochures that we have, and we also have surveys in those brochures, because we want to hear from you. We want to make sure that we're getting things right. So make sure that you fill out those surveys and turn them in. And we want to thank you all for being good hosts. This has been a good crowd here tonight. Hopefully we'll get you out before the rain hits. More coming. And hopefully that won't cause any problems. But again, thank you so much for being here. Everybody have safe travels home.
I'm the owner of Ardot Salon and Spa in Mena.
I'm a graduate from UA Rich Mountain for General Studies.
I'm a medical biller and coder.
I'm a hairstylist.
I'm a welder. I'm very glad I chose.
I'm glad I chose.
Very thankful that I chose.
I'm proud I chose.
I invite you to choose UA Rich Mountain.
The Allied Health Program at UA Rich Mountain continues to grow in enrollment and in strong partnerships with area medical facilities and providers, which aids in the overall educational experience for our students.
This program has really given us some good workforce.
I'm very glad I chose UA Rich Mountain.
Turn your passion into a career. UA Rich Mountain's cosmetology program can be your starting point to launching a career as a hairstylist, nail tech, instructor, or even a salon owner. Our cosmetology students are in the classroom learning theory and also on the floor learning hands-on techniques with mannequins and actual customers.
I'm glad I chose UA Rich Mountain.
I am Katie Nichols, and I'm a graduate of the University of Arkansas Rich Mountain from the IT program.
My name's Ethan Bird. I'm a graduate from UA Rich Mountain for General Studies.
IT is one of the fastest growing industries in the world today, and your journey to becoming an IT consultant, cloud architect, computer forensic investigator, cybersecurity, software, or website developer can begin with an information systems technology degree from UA Rich Mountain. To complement your IT journey, we also offer multi-track associate degrees in business administration and office technology. Whatever path you choose, our instructors and support staff are dedicated to helping you identify your strengths to set you on a career path that not only fits your skills, but one that you will find rewarding.
I'm glad I chose U of A Rich Mountain.
I'm CNC machinist.
I am a machinist.
Machinists are in high demand in the local area. UA Rich Mountain has close partnerships with local businesses and industry who seek out our graduates, knowing they are well prepared for the roles that are critical to their business's success. Students in the machine tool program can earn a certificate of proficiency in one semester, or the technical certificate is a one-year program, or go all the way earning an associate degree, which is a 2-year program.
I'm glad I chose
UA Rich Mountain.
I'm a welder. I started out in welding. I came by to just inquire about what opportunities were out there. I told them that I really liked working with my hands. I wanted to hone in on a skill set. Asked the people over here at the UA Rich Mountain. They said, well, we've got this wonderful welding program you could try out. That sounds awesome, let's try that. I'm very thankful that I chose UA Rich Mountain. I'm a welder. I started out in welding. I came by to just inquire about what opportunities were out there. I told them that I really liked working with my hands. I wanted to hone in on a skill set. I asked the people over here at the UA Rich Mountain. They said, well, we've got this wonderful welding program you could try out. That sounds awesome, let's try that. I'm very thankful that I chose UA Rich Mountain.
I am a licensed massage therapist. UA Rich Mountain's inaugural massage therapy class will be in the job force in a year and potentially earning $45,000 annually. Once obtaining your training, certification, and licensing as a massage therapist, you have everything you need to earn a lucrative career. Students are well equipped in the way of knowledge and skills to compete with even the most seasoned therapists in the industry.
It's your time to get rich.
Rich.